All right, it's 5 p.m. Let's begin the meeting and start with a call to order and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's have a roll call here. All those who are on dialing in, could you identify, commissioners who are dialing in, could you identify yourself?
Got Dave Henry here. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey, Dave.
We have Michael Nishbaum, sorry.
Yeah,
We have Michael Veer, Mike Evans, Jeff Warren, Michael Baisley, George Harris, and myself, so we have a quorum. Thank you very much. The minutes of the last meeting were distributed at the, with the agenda, and I believe there are fairly substantial corrections that are in need to make it correct, I'm going to recommend that Jeff had quite a few to point out, but you couldn't, I think maybe what we want to do is actually have a further draft with some of these corrections in hand to approve of, and then vote separately between meetings by email, because I think there are substantial corrections. Some are just stylistic issues, which are really of no consequence, but some of them are important that ought to be corrected. So if you have any further changes to the to the March minutes, could you please pass them to Jan? And Jan, you've already got Jeff's comments, and then we'll look at another draft, okay? Rather than approving right now. So for my report right now, I've got a few things to talk about. First of all, the budget, which has been submitted, as I mentioned in the last meeting, and it's going to be voted on in May, at which point we don't expect there to be any changes to our existing budget, and off we'll go with that. I think the addition of a boat maintenance line row would be in order, and then we'll zero out the departmental supplies, which handled the signage at the lower wharf. However, there are some initial expenses that were approved of for the harbor master boat, which will be taken care of from those departmental expenses, which is still applied for this year's budget. A question on that budget matter?
When does the new budget take effect? Actual spending from the budget?
July 1?
July 1st.
July 1st.
So the Lower Wharf work coordination, this involved the yacht club being concerned as to whether high school and other programs could be run during right now during the initiation of all the construction. And since most of the work at this point is going to be land-based, that turned out to be not of a concern, so they backed that off. There was also a bit of coordination to figure out how, because this work will be running well into the summer months, and the Blessing of the Fleet parade is going to be changed, and that I believe Jeff's had some conversations with the parade chair, Russ Harris, who, but I believe there's still some consideration as to how it's all going to be handled. But right now, best understanding is that the flow of the water will come from Lower Wharf, from the yacht yard, but the parade itself will start at the Congregational Church, going around and then back up Westway, not proceeding to the yacht yard or to the Lower Wharf, but turning on Westway and then back up to the parking lot of the church, wherein that's where they'll have their gathering for hot dogs and the concerts of the marching bands. Meanwhile, I guess the work itself has begun. I believe they've observationally replaced the pilings that are there, such that it's all that equipment is underway. Now I think they can start doing some work on the riprap that's sitting beneath the seawall there, and then they'll get to work in earnest. But it's underway. You can see a lot of equipment. If you pull the yard, you can see from an angle there. So the other item.
Chris, this is Doug Metzik. I've just been able to dial in. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Sorry.
Chairman, just a question on this subject. Did we ever have a liaison from this commission to their kickoff meeting? I know we discussed it last month.
No, we didn't. I don't think. No, we talked about that, and he had the kickoff meeting before we met, but I don't think there's been anything further. There's been communication with the Harbor Road residents, and I'm sure that's hasn't resulted in anybody making and requesting anything. So just before this meeting, Aidan McConnell, no, I'm sorry, McLaughlin, Jeff Stedman, Brian, and I met with Jennifer Carpenter in the first selectman's office to talk about the process around a memorial to occur somewhere in the area to commemorate and memorialize the great service that Pat Carroll and his influence and impact on the community and the harbor management area during his term as harbor master. And I think, I personally want to make sure I understood process where, is there a process to establish a memorial? And there really isn't one that is written in stone. There's approvals to be gained and things like that. And there may be restrictions according to the deed at the Lower Wharf as to what we can and cannot do. But for all intents and purposes, it's in our hands. And I believe what's the order of the day here is to say that, the Carroll family is interested in proceeding with this. I believe we, as a body, could discuss it here and now to determine whether we believe it's also something that should be pursued, and we would champion it on behalf of the Carroll family. And what I would recommend is that we would form a subcommittee, which Aidan would participate on, to discuss and determine among themselves and the Carroll family what the best route would be, what's the best path to be considered. One is to take a plaque and place it on the Lower Wharf rebuild with a proclamation renaming it from either the selectmen, the RTM, or the first select person, however that works, that renames that wharf, that pier, as the Patrick L. Carroll Wharf. Or another idea was to consider a compass rose placed around the flagpole, and everyone's familiar with what a compass rose is, where you could have some plaques placed inside to memorialize Pat Carroll and perhaps some others in the future should that be considered and warranted. And both of those paths can be considered. Both of them have different work streams. One would involve approvals from, to make sure that we understand that the deed of the Lower Wharf allows for this to occur. And then, of course, to change the name to Patrick L. Carroll Wharf, how that might take place and the steps to be taken. The other path towards a compass rose would involve perhaps some more historic district commission discussions in this, and perhaps the Carroll or this subcommittee, the Carroll family and the subcommittee might come up with a third way to approach this. So, and in which case we'd explore that. But the purpose of that committee would determine the direction, which we would then vote again to support, and bring it to champion it with the various different organizations within the town to get it done and executed. So, having presented it in that way, are there any questions or any discussions?
The flagpole is at Yacht Yard, correct?
Right.
Not Lower Wharf, okay. So that currently is
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, either way, to memorialize them. I balk at renaming the whole property something else other than Lower Wharf. I think if there's a way to name, Jeff may have thought this through already.
We were talking about just the wharf itself, not the whole grass area.
Right, well, it's called Lower Wharf, meaning that the wharf was there.
It would be the Patrick L. Carroll Memorial Pier at the
Here
Lower Wharf.
at the Lower Wharf, okay.
And then we thought that would be the simplest thing because it wouldn't require construction or it would just be an action by the RTM, the Board of Selectmen.
That may also fit within the deed.
Yeah. So that was a simple, but it wasn't, we didn't talk about the two exclusive approaches. The Patrick L. Carroll Memorial Pier at the Lower Wharf is the simplest one, it appears to be. And then as a second effort that could proceed on a longer time period would be to do something at Ye Yacht Yard that might acknowledge the contributions of more than just Pat. But that
or even a third. So the question is not, what it is that we would do, but would the commission support this endeavor by first creating a subcommittee to explore the opportunities, the two that are on the table, and third or fourth or other options, and then come back to the commission to propose what it is that they've come to conclude on, and then we would then vote on that, and with that vote, presumably we'd be able to then champion it through whatever agencies in the town or whatever it is to get it accomplished.
Do you need a motion to make a committee?
Yep, I think I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Is there further discussion? Mike?
Yeah.
No.
approve it.
He's voting already.
Okay. Okay, all those with no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? It passes. Thank you very much. So, Aidan, we'll need to talk about, are there anybody here right now who would like to volunteer to work with Aidan and others on a committee to pursue this?
I'll do that.
Mike? Yeah, okay. So that's 4 people, Mike, Jeff, and Brian, and then as well as Aidan. So that's a subcommittee that's formed. Thank you very much. That's the end of my report, which I can now hand it over to Harbor Master Claire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We begin the even busier time of the year now. We are finishing the assignment of all the moorings. We've had one vote, so it's actually 2 votes taking up moorings that have become available this year, which is good. We're probably going to have a 3rd mooring once the Lower Wharf construction is finished, because I've eliminated one of the moorings adjacent to the Lower Wharf, so it won't get in the way of any potential construction and any equipment, but we'll put that mooring back as soon as they are done with the waterside activities, which will be soon. Some dates for you. Blessing of the Fleet. I went to a meeting last week. It's going to be June 13th on a Saturday. High tide's around 10 or 10:30. It'll be the usual parade starting at 11. As the chairman indicated, it's going to come down to the usual location, to the Pequot Yacht Club, take a right-hand turn along Harbor Road, and then take another right on Westway to head back. We're still, the committee is discussing whether the hot dogs will be distributed at Perry Green or not as a potential location for people to watch. The fire trucks will be pumping the water from Ye Yacht Yard where they usually do it. We think we're going to be putting the clergy on the corner of Ye Yacht Yard, right up the ramp coming from the metal dock on that corner. That's good visibility. I'm going to route the boats the best we can close to shore. Instead of going up with the Helix Field on the right, I'm going to ask them to come up with Perry Green on the right and maybe make a loop around so it can be close to the people. People could see the boats coming by that way. So again, that's June 13th. We'll have another meeting as we get close, several meetings as we get closer. Pequot Yacht Club commissioning is May 17th, and it's the 100th anniversary of their building. But more significant, on Friday, May 15th, the vessel Brilliant is going to be paying a visit to Southport Harbor for the weekend. Brilliant, as you may know, was Mr. Cunningham's boat. He was a Pequot member. He won the America's Cup. The Cunningham on sailboats is named after him, and Brilliant used to live in our harbor for many years. It was given by Mr. Cunningham to Mystic Seaport decades ago, but she's a 60-plus foot sailing vessel. She's going to come in, and it will be docked right at Pequot Yacht Club that day when she arrives for people. So if you're around, you may want to take a look at it, come by boat and see it. We have to get the exact time. She draws 9 or 9.5 feet, so we need to have her come in on a rising tide, close to high tide, so we don't get it stuck in the channel. She's beautiful. If you haven't seen her, she's a beautiful vessel.
That's May 15th.
May 15th, correct, Friday the 15th. Shellfish Commission has reached out to us because their vessel off Shucks is going to become firewood and some other debris. It's not seaworthy anymore. And they've asked assistance from John and I to take them out every other week at sunrise to take water samples off the harbor area, which we clearly volunteered to do. They've also asked us on a couple of occasions to take them out to stock the clam beds off of Sasco Beach. So that's something we gladly agreed to help them with, and I think it will be good so we can learn a little bit more about what they do and the fisheries in the area and the water samples. So
that's fee-based, is it?
Yeah, I'm going to raise that point because I believe they get a grant for doing that, and since they're not using their boat, I don't see why we can't, charge them for our boat on a reasonable hourly fee. They don't know that yet, but I'm having that conversation with conservation since they desperately need a boat. Again, we attended the Pat Carroll meeting. I've met with the fire department twice now. As you know, I think I mentioned they bought 2 new vessels. One of them is a large 30-plus foot firefighting boat that's going to go in South Benson. That's a safe boat. They also have, actually that's a metal ship, or a steel ship, I believe they call it. There's a safe boat coming into Southport, 25 foot with outboard engines that are going to be up 2-3 feet on the back when they're tipped up. It's obviously big compared with the inflatable that they had there now. That's coming in later this summer. For the time being, they're working on repairing their inflatable they have there now. They had problems with one of the tubes deflating. They have the repair kit. They were working on that this week. I asked them to get it in as soon as they could because we have youth sailing going on all the time, and that we need to have a resource available for the fire department to get out there in the event of emergencies. So they're going to be launching that. They had some ideas of where it can go in the harbor and where they would like it. It was a great location, but practically we can't do it without permitting, which they would have to do, and dredging. Another idea was to add another section of dock to Yee Yacht Yard, perpendicularly off where they keep the boat now. There is an extra piece we can get from Pequot that they were disposing of to make it a little bit longer to support their boat at the end there. So we're going to try to coordinate with them to have a home for their boat for this year. Obviously we can't, I would give them a mooring, but we can't really stick it on a mooring or off of Perry Green because they have to get out there quickly for a fire or a rescue. They can't be paddling the rowboat out to their fireboat. We had one paddle board has been recovered already. It was floating a few days ago off of Southport. A fisherman brought it in, notified us, the Fairfield Police and the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard asked us if we know whose it is to keep an eye out for it. Don't know whose it is because there's no name on it, of course. So I did send a reminder out to folks with harbor interest to please label your equipment, or your paddle boards, your kayaks, and I have stickers if anyone needs them for that purpose from deep. Just because if we find one floating, it would be great to make a phone call right away and say, do you know where your paddle board is? And either hear, yes, my husband's on it on the sound, that's one response, versus, I think it's on my deck tied up, nope, it's not there. That makes a much different response. So we're working on that. And that's something I'm going to talk about, to segue. John and I have a law enforcement DEEP seminar on May 6th up at DEEP headquarters. And I want to talk to them about perhaps making it mandatory labeling. I don't want to go registration of paddle boards and kayaks, but this happens all the time. We find boats and we don't know whose they are, whether they fell off a sailboat. If we had a requirement that people label them somehow, that would make people's job much easier when you found one, not only to return it, to make sure there's not a person associated with it that's no longer with it. While we were sitting here, I got my first complaint of a speeding boat making an excessive wake in the harbor. Someone sent me a video.
Wow.
But that didn't take long. It's not one of our harbor boats. I checked already, so I'm going to have to run the registration later and see if I can get it off the screenshot and then have a chat with the person about that, since we do have boats in the harbor. And that is my report. I think I covered everything. Oh, the new Harbor Master boat will be going in. All the fenders have come in that we ordered in the line, so I can make a safe spot at the end of the dock and protect it probably this weekend, weather permitting. If not, definitely the following week or weekend.
That's great.
It's rain all weekend, so that's the plan.
Thank you. Any questions?
Jeff?
The sampling for the shellfish management purposes, I think the Bureau of Aquaculture has I don't know if it's a requirement or a program for certifying or, that the people who do the testing or sampling need to go through.
We're just driving them out. We're just the Uber drivers.
Oh, okay, you're not,
No,
okay,
we're just driving the boat there.
all right.
Scooping the water, and the Shellfish Commission, or I should say the conservation staff is doing it. Yes.
Brian, how does the contractor set the moorings? Does he use GPS? How accurate is it?
Yeah, it's very accurate. We have detailed records they use. They use a combination of GPS plus measurements off of shore points and the old-fashioned bearings of different structures in the harbor and telephone poles and pilings that are at fixed locations. And they put them in virtually the exact location. They're very careful about that because we're so tight. And if we're off with one.
Did they make any adjustment for the wider channel?
No, they're going the same locations, yeah. But they didn't dredge, though, anywhere the moorings are, except they only dredged up to the end where, like, Souffle is.
Understood.
But, yeah.
Just seems like a wider aperture, and now that first line of wall moorings look a little...
They do, but if you remember last year, I've got
a little more towards Channel Center,
Yeah, it depends on the tides, because last year we had the photos back in September, October. We had some unusually low tides, and boats were sitting on the bottom on the east side, the mid-wall by the country club. We had some of the keel boats that were just...
Yes, that's where I am.
Yeah.
I wasn't there that day.
Yes. And you don't draw as much as some of the boats with the bigger keels, and yours were sitting a little bit over. So, yeah.
Brian, how does the fire department generally staff the two boats and figure out who goes to what, and how does that work?
I was asking him about that. We had that discussion. So they have captains, not fire department rank captains. You'll have a lieutenant on a truck,
right.
3 men on every piece of apparatus, a lieutenant, and then the driver and the passenger, I'll call them.
Sure.
Who are firefighters. They also have captains, people that are certified in 2 different categories. One gets an internal certification or some program they go to. Some are certified near shore or harbors. Others are certified to go offshore a little bit with their boats. So if you dialed 911 and you needed the boat out of Southport because either they needed both boats, which they'll dispatch, like a kid floating off of Jennings Beach with a float.
Okay.
The fire boat, the police boat, and the second fire boat will all head over. Company 4 from Southport will just send whatever truck is there, and there's usually a captain on board or someone certified on all their shifts.
Yeah.
The same at South Benson.
So they jump off the truck.
They jump off the truck and go.
Because
we talked about timing, because the new boat in South Benson is going to have a fire. It's going to be a fire boat with the nozzle and the squirting ability.
Yeah.
But again, that'd be nice. But if God forbid, on Pine Creek there's a fire, you can't get in most of the time now because of the shoaling.
Right.
But the smaller boat, which also can't get in all the time, we'll have a pump on it as well. So we talked about response times, and I asked we do some training here in the harbor of the yacht club staff and me and the fire department. So if we have a fire on a boat in the harbor, whether it's at the dock at Pequot, which is easier because trucks could come from shore, or a boat on a mooring, what do we do? Are we supposed to cut the mooring lines? If I get there first, am I supposed to put water on the mooring line so it doesn't burn and start floating up the harbor burning?
Right.
How do you want to handle that? What boats are going to come and what's the timing? And we talked about even getting the big fire boat from South Benson. So the fire truck's going to be 5 to 7 minutes to get there and get on the boat.
Right.
And then from there, even that boat is fast, it's still 15 minutes to get over.
15.
You've got to go around the reef, and even though it may be going 40 miles an hour plus, it's, anybody with a boat knows. So we have to have a plan here in the harbor. And
what do I do with that 20 minutes?
Travis and I were going to coordinate. What do we do? What's the yacht club supposed to do? They're there all the time. What do we do? What do we tell the boat owners to do? Do we move boats next to them out of the way? How do you handle something like that if it ever happens? So we're going to be coordinating that with the department, so we have an idea. that ever happens.
Brian, what is the safety drill?
The safety, we don't have a date on that yet. That'll be coming up in May or June as well. And that's an annual for the new members. We do a safety drill, which is great, every summer at Pequot, where we invite the police and the fire, and they have a mock disaster for all the sailing instructors. They take all the whalers out from the club, and they pretend something happens. Last year, I think a squall came through, people were in the water, and then someone got hit with a prop on the boat at the same time, which, we have prop guards, but we just simulate things that could happen. And then have it coordinated. How do they call back to the base at Pequot? Who calls 911? Where do the fire trucks and the ambulances go to pick up injured? The police come in and see how long it takes to get there. And then how do you coordinate? It's usually a communications issue we have to work with because they have multiple channels, 69, 68, 16. Who's communicating to who on what channel?
That was they always throw in a curveball. And that was the curveball this year last year was, somebody was on channel 16 saying there was a shark attack, and suddenly that disrupted all the communication. And how do you handle that and win the day? So it was good. Anyway, so that we'll find out later.
There's dead spots, which I realized 2 years ago. I didn't realize I was within 100 feet of a Pequot boat, and the police were trying to call that boat, and I can hear it, but they couldn't hear it because they said there are some very unique dead spots off of Southport.
Or just VHF, high, low, whatever watts they're transmitting.
There's a lot of education because the kids are going to be there first, and it's going to take a while for them to get help. And I try to impress that upon them. This is going to be your problem.
If you're transmitting at 1 watt, you can hear me.
Yeah.
If you're transmitting at 25, you can't hear me from here. I mean, you can hear me in Long Island.
Yeah, right. So that's a lot of...
Anyway, so we've got some matters to go through. Why don't we move on? Any other questions for...
Yes, one other, not to take a lot of time, but you mentioned the fire department.
Yes.
Last week, there was a very interesting presentation and demonstration at the Fire Training Center. I thought that you might be there. I guess it was initiated by the Fairfield Beach Association. And it was a demonstration of what's called tiger dams. and they're inflatable, not inflatable. You pump water into them. So they're temporary flood barriers. And the fire department was there, and there was a demonstration. And apparently they're used quite extensively in Florida, successfully prior to hurricanes. So they're long tubes. They're folded up in a very small, they don't take a lot of space, and then they're filled with water, either from a hydrant or by pumping from the salt water. And they're placed as a temporary flood barrier. There's a lot of interesting discussion about, placing them along the beach or also along roads and the issues that are associated with do you need permits from DEEP, but it was a quite well, but the company who made the presentation, describe their applicability and use in other places. So I guess the next step is to see if it's something that the Fairfield Emergency Services are interested in doing. But then again, it originated, I believe, from the Fairfield Beach Association because during a hurricane, the whole area is covered. It was quite interesting.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to caution us. We're only getting on to new business now. We're already half an hour in, so I'm going to ask people to move along quickly, and let's get into the first item, harbor management legislation. Jeff.
Well, we weren't successful, and I guess we should have realized at the beginning of the legislative session that we didn't have much of a chance because it was a short, and I'm assuming it's still ongoing, legislative session. And in the short sessions, the bills that are considered are generally bills that were thought of before the session started, and there's not an opportunity or much of an opportunity to submit a bill during the session. So this affects all of the other towns, and we'll keep working towards next year. But in the interim, with respect to the update of the harbor management plan, just like in other towns, we will put in the implementation section what we believe the authority of the Harbor Management Commission should be and has been approved by DEEP. Anyway, we weren't.
So nice segue to number 5, right? So then, you're saying that because that has not failed, we'll move forward now. We'll get back to momentum and we'll make. Okay, good.
In coordination with the other towns who are, New London, for example, Stamford, the other towns updating their plans. We'll have hopefully have a consistent approach, and then it'll make DEEP have to address this problem, and maybe it'll be more impetus for legislative clarification next session.
Perfect segue. You nipped two birds with one stone. Excellent work. But now you've got a third. So we're now Tide Mill Dam repair, please.
Well, that's an interesting ongoing matter. We've got confirmation from planning and zoning that a coastal site plan review and approval from planning and zoning is necessary. And the applicant has been advised and apparently is preparing the coastal site plan application. That requires, as all coastal site plans do affecting the harbor, referral to the Harbor Management Commission 35 days before planning and zoning acts on it, for the commission to make a recommendation to planning and zoning. And I think that would be the opportunity for the applicant or the engineer to come into the commission meeting and be able to address questions that we have. Looking at the structure now, you can see that a piece of the dam above the easternmost tide gate has broken off. That was last month we saw that. And also the surface of the dam on the right side, or the eastern side. A year ago, that was a relatively smooth surface. Now that's cracked and there's some pieces in it. The question to DEEP, I think the big question is, what happens if the dam fails? Is there a remedy? Is there a responsibility by the property owner? And the answer from DEEP, I don't think that they know, but the answer I'm assuming is that if the dam fails, that there's no requirement that the applicant has to rebuild it. So the river will essentially assume the natural position that it assumes. And we talked about this with respect to the Bulkley Pond Dam on the Sasko Brook in Westport. When that dam broke, there was initially some discussion about repairing it, trying to get funds for doing it, but the end result was to just leave the opening and the area behind it changed from a pond environment to the marsh environment. I also asked the conservation director earlier today if there's been any response or news regarding the town's grant application for money to assist in the repair. And Mr. Bishop said he's heard nothing about that. So right now, I guess the main question is what happens if that structure fails? And I guess that's something that we'll still keep an eye out for and learn more as time progresses. But I guess most of the thing that we look forward that we have to anticipate in the near future is the site plan application from planning and zoning.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions on that?
Is there any room for outside participation in this? I brought some pictures.
We'll get to the public at the end, if you wouldn't mind. Any questions for Jeff? Moving on to the mooring committee.
No report.
Report. Nice report. Harbor management plan we just went over. Sand management plan, Mr. Evans and Mr. Stedman.
Well, nothing really to report that we've made any progress other than adding to the list. We talked about naming the sections based on the Corps' naming of the channel and the recommendation to put in the north acreage, which we've done. I'd like to recommend that we propose what our plan is for the near future. And to me, the two are the country club trying to build a sand trap behind the present breakwater to support handling a sandy type storm plus the yearly normal migration of sand. And Chris has been talking to the country club, and they're not really ready to talk about it yet, but that we would just...
Well, to that point, I mean, they're right in the midst of their golf season. It's just really kind of kicked off. So I guess it's not high on their priority list. I'll reach out to them again and say, because they haven't called me to invite me to a meeting with their engineers and Ray's.
Right. And I think that would be critical if we get that to happen, because then we would know what we were going to do if we had grant money at some other point.
Also, we mentioned maybe last month that we should anticipate, even though it's not for sure, that the Port Authority will have announce another round of the SHIP grant accepting applications. They said in the third quarter of this year, and that's because the just completed review of grants did not result in allocation of all the money they had to allocate. So there's additional funds left, and we've been advised by the Port Authority, it's not for sure, but we should be prepared to submit an application if we do have some ideas. And this also applies to private entities. So if the country club was interested in having an engineering study, of what the best approach to managing the sand, I believe if there is another round of grants, that would be potentially fundable.
And that segues again into a new business item here. But so I mentioned that to the country club, that there's going to be new rounds of funding available that they could take advantage of to cover the cost of engineering that they might want to employ for this topic. And so they're aware of that. I'll remind them of that again, and that, at some point, but I mean, they have to decide whether to do that or not.
But relative to the update of the harbor management plan, there should be a recommendation or a policy or a statement regarding the management of the sand and the...
To develop preventative measures.
Yes. We don't have to have the details right now, but to set the basis for that is a policy of the harbor management plan, that sand should be managed.
I'd be happy to help you with that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, this is a quick question. Obviously we're talking about, what needs to be done on the country club property, but is there a broader study that says, hey, here are all our potential options in terms of sand management that we could just do as a committee and apply to the SHIP grant, as opposed to having to rely on a third party to do it, and then incorporate the country club into it and just say,
The base actually put in how much sand it moves a year, how much was sandy, and did recommend sand traps.
Okay.
So basically, what we're proposing,
They
sand
that's
trap
already
on
been
both
done.
sides, where I'm sort of saying we should just put it on one side.
Yeah.
This was 16 years ago when we did just that. We had an engineering firm look at the movement of sand and calculate the volume based on aerial photo reviews and so forth, and came up with recommendations, but we never pursued implementation of it, because this was 2010, and then Storm Sandy was 2 years after that, and then we got focused on the need to, open the channel.
Right.
But the basis of this and the Harbor Commission's central basic policy that this should be
This is the way to handle it.
back passed or...
Right. Yeah.
And it actually gave us quantities.
Oh, yes.
When I went back, so I can quote, we need a trap to hold this much cubic feet.
Got it, okay, all right. I didn't realize that the degree to which that was.
And again, with the permission of the country club, the Harbor Commission could apply for the engineering grant to do this.
So they're interested in doing that, and they're alerted to that possibility, that, whether they do that now or later, there's just no control. I can continue to urge them.
And then the other area I looked at is basically the Parks and Recreation area that's silting in, and I think it falls into the fire boats, the harbor master boats. And when I was down there at the latest low tide, being part of community sailing, that dock was so low in the water, I'm not sure goose and gander could have gotten in and out on the day I was standing there. And I think that we should go to Parks and Recreation and make a presentation that we feel these areas are of concern and that they need dredging.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brian coming, talking about the boats, he could give them that. I think Jeff coming and talking about what it takes to dredge and the type of engineering needed would able to give them a full picture.
But Michael, we had a permit to dredge that area, and we couldn't do the work because there was no place for disposal because of the contamination of it. But it's very interesting, and Brian brought it up, that last week there was a public meeting having to do with the dredging of Bridgeport and Black Rock Harbor. Mm-hmm. And they're putting the contaminated material from both harbors in separate, what they call CAD cells, digging a big pit, putting the contaminated material in, and then covering it up. And in that instance, they're also allowing private entities, and they talked about in Black Rock Harbor and Bridgeport, to also put dredged material into this CAD cell in addition to the federal.
Can we add to that?
And I think that brings up the question, could we potentially get involved in because we don't have a lot of material. I don't know how many barge loads it would be to take it over and put it in one of those CAD cells.
So my proposal, if accepted, we should send a group to talk to Parks and Recreation and try to
revisit that? Yes, the permit expired, we didn't pursue renewal of it, we pursued the permit to rebuild the pier.
But we have all of the
But we
information.
have all the information, yes.
Clarification. Parks and Rec, they are responsible for the floating docks at Yee Yacht Yard and adjacent to Yee.
Yep.
Maintenance and allocation.
And we got.
And apparently dredging.
But we got the permit for them, because we applied for the SHIP grant to do it, as the Harbor Management Commission. But again, it couldn't be implemented because of the lack of the place to dispose of the contaminated material.
Well, could we organize a meeting with them to do this then?
So just thinking about the best approach for this, and tell me if you think this is a good way to do it. For maybe I contact Parks and Rec and say, you've got a lot of things on your plate, maybe you haven't had a chance to understand the ramifications from a safety first responder standpoint, as well as best use of the harbor, but that's certainly of our interest within the Harbor Management Commission, and it's worsening every year. There may be a solution with this operation that's going on in Bridgeport that give us some ability to move sooner than later, because we haven't been able to move in the past. Could we come to your next meeting and a group of us provide this information at your meeting? What do you think about that?
I certainly need to know how to approach. I don't know. That sounds good to me. I just worry that with this type of work, it needs to go fairly quickly, because if Bridgeport's already got committed.
That's not very quickly, no.
It's not gonna happen quickly.
No, it could be years.
We joked that
For the dredging in Bridgeport.
Oh, yeah. Bridgeport and Black Rock Harbor.
planning for the dredging of Bridgeport Harbor started in June of 1997.
All right, but in any case, starting the ball rolling from our standpoint with the Parks and Rec is not a bad idea. I agree, and if you agree with the approach that I suggested, where I make that initial contact,
I agree.
and see if they're interested in making a presentation to them in one of their meetings.
Chairman, can I make a motion, draft motion, that we appoint a liaison to the Parks and Rec? So it's on the record, whoever wants to do it, we put names forward and we can, that would be my motion, to make a official liaison to the Parks and Rec on this issue. Or maybe several people.
Because there's this interlocking circle of our interest in the harbor and their interest in the harbor, you're saying that we ought to have an ongoing dialogue through
What I observe is that we could all be asking questions simultaneously of the Parks and Rec, or there could be one single point of contact, which makes it more efficient for our commission.
Or worse, or the flip side is that we go and have our conversations here and it's a lot of hot air, they never hear about it and nothing happens. Right. All right, so why don't I make this initial phone call? If that opens the door for, further conversation, maybe we can assign somebody to be that liaison. Would that be a good approach? I'm not sure that requires a vote on a motion.
The motion was just to have discussion about this issue. And if people agree, like you're saying, to have a point of contact, a liaison with the commission, we will move forward with that.
And in general,
we don't have to vote on a person at this point, but just the idea of having
a dialogue,
point of contact,
opening up the doors for continued dialogue. Okay, I'll do that then. All right. Thank you very much. Anything else? Any other questions on that? So Mike, as we all know, has done a lot of work to create, Michael Evans, that is, to create this kind of compendium of those 6 key points within the harbor management area where effort needs to be given at different times, either now or in the future, for sand management activity. And he's mentioned the 2, one being this Parks and Rec area by the, and each one of them has a name. We're going to be talking in a moment from now about the Outer Harbor Channel dredging project, and Jeff will update us on that. But for us to put together all of the relevant information for each of those 6 areas and have it as a go-to reference document for us going forward, I think is a very useful tool for us to have. And Mike is willing to put that together. You'll have the stakeholders, the issue at hand, potential costs, timing is when it becomes urgent, things like that. And have that all in a document which we can refer back to, because as we move forward, all of us in this room go on to our next demand, and we have another group in here who ask the same questions 5 years from now. To have that going and on living document would be a useful tool for us, I think. And
I just need help making.
Mike's been doing a great job in that, but I think he needs some help. And would anybody volunteer to lend him a hand?
I will.
Okay.
Might I just say, interrupt, that this would be something incorporated into the harbor management plan. And I think it's probably better to not refer to this as a sand management plan, but as a dredging plan, because if the yacht club's area doesn't include sand, it's not a question of benefit.
Whatever we want to call it. Whatever, I'm just thinking we ought to have that reference document. Okay.
As part of the harbor management plan.
Whatever.
Yes, and it's actually, the town of Greenwich is working on something like this now too.
Right.
They're calling it a dredging plan and applying to for the ship.
So Mike and George will handle that. Thank you very much, guys. So the Outer Harbor Channel Dredging Project, Jeff.
Well, Brian and also Travis from the Yacht Club provided information to complete this harbor information and navigation metrics form, working on a summary statement about it hasn't been submitted to the Corps yet. Ms. Siligato is going to leave, but I assume that next week we would submit that. It's essentially a formality as part of starting the process of the Outer Harbor dredging project. And there are two other towns, city of Stamford and the town of Greenwich are also in the same position. Greenwich is a bit ahead of everything, but both filling out these forms to get on the Corps' list for the next round of dredging projects.
Great. Any questions on that? Okay. The green.
I actually have one question. You said the Corps was coming down, somebody was coming down to look at it. Did she come?
No, she went on leave. I believe she'll be back. If she's not back this week, next week. But she's going to make a visit down here.
The Greensfront Road Bridge Project.
There's not much to say about that. That's across Sasko Brook, between Fairfield and Westport. The applicant for the bridge project was the town of Westport. We commented on it a while ago. I think it was even over a year ago. And the main concerns we had in the pre-submission phase was that the design had to deal with stormwater management and not increase runoff from the bridge surfaces and the road surfaces. But this is very, very interesting because the process of these there's nothing for us to do now. But the process of the deep permits, just like with the Pequot Yacht Club, there's a pre-submission part of it, and then when DEEP makes a determination to approve the application, it sends out a public notice seeking public comment. And we never saw a public notice because it wasn't posted on the DEEP website. So the public notice was, I guess, issued on March 5th, and there's a 30-day comment period, but it wasn't on the website, so we didn't know about it. And when I asked DEEP about this, it was interesting because not that this is a particularly controversial project, but in other towns, there are controversial projects where the projects weren't posted on the website. People who were interested didn't have an opportunity to comment. And DEEP's response was it's not a legal requirement to post it on the website. There are legal requirements to provide it to the harbor master. But in other words, it's passed now. But I think it points to an issue with DEEP, not that we'll follow up with in terms of future ones. But there's nothing to talk about now. And the town engineer wasn't aware of it either when I brought it up to him. So whether the permit's been issued yet or not, but we don't have an opportunity for input.
Great, thank you. Any questions? I'm going to bring up another topic that George Harris and I were in dialogue texting about an email we received, a copy of the Harbor Management Commission email saying that the Tom Stanky, who has retired as, I think he was a commissioner of conservation for the town, had observed the the permissions from the yacht club for the dock rebuilding and expressed some concern that one of the docks at the very southwestern edge is going to be moved slightly into the area that is run and handled by the deed from the Perry family on the Perry Green. And he's questioning as to whether, the yacht club is going to have to redesign its plan or something like that. And, but I'm just mentioning that if something were to happen that resulted in a change in their plan, it'll all be coming back to us for yet another a letter to comment its consistency with the harbor management plan. There's not much more to report than that, as we've only just heard about it. But that's about it, George.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he mentioned that the Harbor Management Commission, our commission, had approved it as being consistent with the harbor management plan, which had no knowledge of where Peregrine's easements are.
Right.
So.
Okay, so under new business, projects to consider for available Port Authority SHIP grants. I mean, just mentioned this, and I think, we know that there's going to be an opportunity for other submissions. We don't have anything of substance right now, except maybe some things like harbor management plan rewrite, for example. But we want to make sure that we're alert to projects that could apply, so that we can apply.
Would redoing that dredging, the permit that broke, would that be one that we could also use some money?
I think we should give some thought to that, especially if there's an opportunity to place the contaminated, now to do something with the contaminated material.
It would involve Parks and Rec, as that's their
right
property, really.
But if we help them make the last permit, they're not going to do it without us this time.
Well, we didn't help them. We made it.
We did it.
We did it. Yeah. But we should check and see if there is an opportunity now that didn't exist before to deal with the contaminated dredge material. And if there is, maybe apply for updating or submitting a new permit application. Something at least we can think about.
Do you have any contacts you can contact with and find out about this project in Bridgeport?
Yes. I don't know, but we should find out about it. I don't know how, but yes, it's a question to ask.
And they're having their public hearing process as well, so when we hear about it, I can email people.
Yeah, that was it was an hour and a half meeting, and there's a cost share involved with making these CAD cells to deal with the contaminated material.
Is that an acronym for? CAD?
Confined Aquatic Disposal.
Disposal.
So they dig a hole and put the contaminated material in it. But
a wet hole.
What?
How do they dig a wet hole?
They actually, just like they're dredging, except they dig it deep, they dredge it deeper. But there's a cost share for doing that.
Yeah.
So there's a local cost share having to do with the percentage of, the federal project, but any private project, the non-federal cost share is 100% of it. And the state apparently is providing funds for, well, anyway, we'll investigate it and see.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Very good. That brings us now to new applications. Do we have new applications? None. Public comments, gentlemen.
Well, I'm pleased that there's so much conversation on the tide dam, and I was prepared to talk about some of the same stuff that Jeff talked about.
Can you say your name and address?
Tom Carell,
Okay.
106 Somerset Avenue. And I'll show you some pictures that I've taken over the last few years, and there's 5 of them. This is the old dam with all the configurations at the top. And you pay particular attention to this spot right there, because you're going to see that down the road, okay? And I'm sorry I don't have enough ink to print copies for everyone. Number 2 is the same dam a few weeks ago, with a big hole in that spot where the arrow is. And I don't know whether after the removal of all that structure that opened up the other two gates, so they're now all blasting full blast, if that washed that piece out, if it broke it out, but that's how deteriorated the concrete is around this structure. This is the same image at a higher level, higher tide level, so that you can see how much is going through there and the force. This would be the east side of the dam going, heading south from the bridge. And it's designed to show you the amount of water that goes through fractured concrete at certain times during the tidal flow. And the last one is the effects upstream of the amount of water that we're not seeing or is not staying in the river. This would usually be way up on these rocks. And my point in all of this is, what Jeff's first comment was, what happens if this dam fails? This dam is failing, it's deteriorating. The water is on the right side in that next to the last picture, is going through the dam to get a current outside of it when the tide is going down. And that's pretty fragile. The other side of the dam where the spillway is equally as bad, with just bigger chunks of stone, concrete that the water penetrates through. So, you guys are concerned about dredging. How much silt goes through that as it's blasting down there? How much sand goes through there? I have no idea, but is that affecting your dredging? You dredge, are you keeping any data for how that bottom goes up when the sediment gets into the sediment gets into the harbor?
Yes.
Are you? Great.
Our harbor master's gonna be taking soundings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because that would give you a good indication of what's gonna happen, and if that dam breaks or continues to deteriorate, there's gonna be more coming, it seems to me.
Only for a short period of time.
I'm sorry?
Only for a short period of time.
Well, until the Phragmites gets well rooted. Yeah. But for looking out in these areas that go through that transition, there's no birds left. Matter of fact, it looked like this morning, there was a young hatchling eagle that had fledged that landed on one of the trees. Has anybody seen a young eagle around? No? But it looked like it was.
I've seen a pair all through last year.
Yeah, but
nesting in that one of those big trees right to the right.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if anybody's seen a fledgling that.
I haven't seen a fledgling.
It wasn't there last week, And and then the other side of this comes from, we don't, as neighbors up there, have any indication of what RACE has done, and other than the report that they have, of course, of what the costs are associated with this project and the timeline. We're going into another summer. What are we going to expect up there? This repair, it'll take oodles of time. It's going to take over a year. And, I remember the discussion in an earlier meeting about the road situation at the project that you're doing now. Now you're talking about a road that gets a lot of use. That's a dead-end street, if I'm, correct in where you're working and what the project is. And there's no, the frustration of not having any information about this is really, getting to a lot of our neighbors. And then when you talk to people at DEEP, I don't know. I could not get the answer to the question of whether they knew that this dam was taken apart and all of those pieces on those three gates or the other two gates are gone. They didn't know that happened in the people that I talked to there. So What are the chances of us getting information on costs? Because if this is too expensive and the owner can't afford it, and we're not gonna see any solutions down the road, is anybody investigating that side of the equation to see, you know, I know we have a grant that was put out before Christmas. There's been no information on that at any of your meetings that I've heard. And I haven't asked Tim Bishop lately, but somebody said that they had talked to them and reported that. But has anybody talked to the owner, other than they're hiring Rays to do this? Or is there any cooperation there? Is it possible that he could afford that much? And what happens if he doesn't? You know, those are the questions that I have. You know, I'm sorry to come in and harp like this, but you know, we need some help to know what's going on. These are our backyards, and they're the vital parts of our community, and have a great influence on the harbor. So, thanks. You want these or no?
Thank you. I don't think I need them, but thank you for bringing this all to our attention. It's you know, I've said before, I'm not sure where it is that we have the ability to help you specifically, but you know, we're certainly sympathetic to the issue. As Jeff said, if the complete failure occurs, it would probably just be left to return to natural state.
Well, that's not what the rules say, as far as the owner is responsible for repairs, and some entity in the government can put a lien on that person's property for the cost of the repairs.
Could be an LLC. I don't know how it's held. You know, who owns that property.
Still, though, think that the opportunity to ask questions is to help assemble information and understand the problem and contribute to the solution where it can. But the opportunity to ask questions of the engineer will be when we get the coastal site plan review application referred to us. It's also interesting that the I can't find it where, but this issued certificate requires the applicant to complete the repairs within 1 year. Shall complete all work described in the authorized activities within 1 year of the issuance of this license, unless the commissioner makes an exception. So there's just a lot of questions, but I don't think that, well, maybe it doesn't matter, I don't know for sure, but that the issue of siltation and sedimentation into the harbor for our dredging purposes is as significant as the change in the natural environment that would take place upstream of the dam. But you know, the sediment getting down, the issues of the sand in the harbor that we're talking about, that comes from longshore movement, and the first area that would be impacted by any siltation coming downstream or sedimentation would be the yacht club's anchorage.
The North Anchorage, yeah.
But the change of the natural environment, just as what took place at the Bulkley Pond, would be significant in that area between that we know of, between the dam and the post road.
Right.
Jeff, you're always educating us, appreciate it. But what is that document? Is that a draft application for the work pending?
This is the approval issued by DEEP to the owner of the property to make the repairs.
What's it dated?
Well, that's what I was just looking at. The application was submitted October 31 of last year. I have it in the email transmission, but interestingly, DEEP didn't put the date of the issuance of the approval on this document.
And who's the applicant?
This is addressed to Mr. Goodrich, and the licensee is the Tide Mill Real Estate LLC.
LLC. So if they, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that they're kind of limited. If they're not going to be able to put a lien on personal assets, it'll stop at that. LLC.
The Deep didn't address the question when I asked it, what takes place afterwards, if the dam fails. They didn't provide a direct answer. They don't know.
So what's the next step in this process? A study?
No, the next step in the process, they have the state approval. The next step is to get the town approval from planning and zoning with respect to impacts on the upland, including on Harbor Road, with having to do with the storage of equipment and movement of construction vehicles, just like for Perry Green and the Lower Wharf. They're not looking so much at the impacts in the water, but on the upland. So they need to get that town approval before they can do the work. And then, of course, the next step is to have the money to do the work.
So your concerns could be addressed at P&Z, which is the next step in this process.
I've spoken to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Are there any other public comments, discussions? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.